When we think about achieving real long-term success, we often imagine it requires some complex formula or one big break. But it's actually much simpler than that. It all comes down to understanding this quiet but incredibly powerful force that shapes all of our results. But before we get into that, let's talk about something I'm sure we've all felt. It's that deep frustration when you put in a massive amount of effort. Maybe you start a new savings plan or dedicate extra hours to a project, but the results you see are just barely noticeable. It can really feel like you're just spinning your wheels, right? And that feeling, that lack of immediate feedback, often leads us to make a critical mistake. It's a lot like the story of the miner who gives up digging just 3 feet from gold. Because we don't get that instant gratification we're looking for, we end up quitting the process right before the real rewards are about to surface. All right, so let's get into the solution. To overcome this trap, we really need to understand a fundamental principle that governs how results are actually created, and that's the compounding principle. So what exactly is the compound effect? Well, at its heart, it's the idea of reaping massive rewards from a series of small, smart choices that you make consistently over time. The keywords there are small and consistently. This really isn't about making grand, sweeping changes. It's all about the quiet power of repetition. And the formula for making this work is beautifully simple. It just has 3 parts. First, you have small, smart choices. Second, you need consistency in making those choices. And third, you need time. You have to give it enough time for the effect to really start growing. When you put those 3 things together, that's when you start to see a radical difference in your outcome. Here's a great analogy to make this idea really concrete. Think about an airplane. If its heading is shifted by just 2.4 degrees at takeoff, it will end up landing in a completely different city. A flight from Moscow, for example, would end up in Stockholm. During the journey, the change is almost impossible to notice, but the final destination is profoundly different. And that's exactly what your small daily choices are. They're that tiny 2.4 degrees shift. Okay, let's apply this to something practical, like health. Imagine skipping a single 240-calorie snack bar just on weekdays. On any given day, that seems totally insignificant, right? But that one small choice, when you repeat it consistently, adds up to over 60,000 calories saved in a year. And that translates to losing roughly 8 kilograms. See? The daily action is tiny, but the cumulative result is huge. Now, a really important part of compounding is that the results often aren't linear. They're exponential. You see this everywhere. The top performer in almost any field isn't necessarily twice as good as the person in 10th place, but they often earn many, many times more. Think about a golf tournament. The winner might beat the runner-up by just a single stroke, but they could take home double the prize money. Being just that little bit better consistently can lead to these vastly disproportionate rewards. Okay, so we have the formula. But for any of this to actually work, it requires a certain mindset. This is really the foundation that everything else is built on. The idea of taking 100% responsibility for your life and your outcomes. So what does that really mean, to take 100% responsibility? Well, a lot of people see responsibility as a 50-50 split, especially in things like relationships or business partnerships. But the truly effective approach is to take complete 100% ownership of your own actions, with absolutely zero expectation of getting anything in return. You can't control what other people do, but you can always control your own input, and that's where your real power is. This idea is captured so powerfully by Viktor Frankl, a psychologist who survived the Holocaust. He wrote that even in the most unimaginable circumstances, the one thing that could never be taken away from a person was their freedom to choose their own attitude and response. And that right there is the very essence of taking 100% responsibility. All right, so now let's turn this mindset into a practical method. Once you've really adopted this sense of total responsibility, the single most effective tool for making conscious, positive choices is tracking. There's a simple story that illustrates this perfectly. A man is galloping on a horse, and a bystander shouts out, "Where are you going?" The rider just replies, "I have no idea. Ask the horse." And for most of us, that's how we live our lives. Our unconscious habits are the horse, and we're just along for the ride, basically sleepwalking through some of our most critical decisions. And this is exactly where tracking comes in. The simple act of consciously monitoring your choices and your actions is so powerful because of a basic truth. What gets measured gets managed. Just the act of observing something creates awareness, and awareness is always the first necessary step if you want to make an intentional change. Let's take personal finance as an example. Instead of using some automated app, try this. For 1 month, manually write down every single expense in a small notebook. The minor inconvenience of having to physically record that purchase forces you to be conscious of it. It introduces just a little bit of friction that makes it harder to spend against your own financial goals. So, tracking creates awareness. But to maintain that consistency, not just for weeks, but for years, you need fuel. This is where a lot of people get stuck. They try to rely on willpower, but willpower is a finite resource. And honestly, it's often no match for our deep-seated, comfortable habits. And that brings us to a really crucial idea. Instead of just relying on willpower, you need what's called why power. This is that deep internal motivation that drives you, that pushes you through the discomfort and helps you resist the powerful pull of short-term gratification. Let me show you what I mean with a simple example. Imagine I laid this plank on the ground and offered you $20 to walk across it. Of course you'd do. There's no hesitation because there's no risk. Okay, now let's take that exact same plank and place it between 2 skyscrapers. For that same $20, would you walk across it now? No way. The reward is completely insignificant compared to the enormous risk. But what if your child was on that other skyscraper and the building was on fire? You wouldn't even think about it. You would cross that plank in an instant without a thought for the risk or the reward. Now notice, the task itself, walking across the plank, never changed. The only thing that changed was your why. When your reason is powerful enough, the challenges almost become irrelevant. So, once you have a powerful why and a system for tracking your choices, the final piece of the puzzle is to consciously manage the external forces that shape your daily life. Because these influences can either accelerate your momentum or they can sabotage it completely. And there are really 3 key influences to pay attention to. First is your input, what you feed your mind. Is it a constant diet of junk news and negativity, or is it useful, inspiring knowledge? Second, your associations, the people you spend the most time with. Because over time, you become the average of their habits and their attitudes. And third, your environment, the actual physical and even digital spaces you live in. So let's just quickly summarize the core lessons here. First, it's the small, consistent choices that create radical differences over time. Second, you have to take 100% responsibility for your life. Third, track your habits to create the awareness you need to make changes. Fourth, remember that your why is far more powerful than willpower. And finally, be very deliberate about managing the inputs, people, and environments that you allow into your life.